You started something. You don't remember exactly when, but you started. You made a decision, changed a habit, woke up earlier, spent less, saved more, read the book, took the course, told yourself this time is different. And it was different, for a while. Then you looked up, and you were roughly where you started. Not because you failed. That's the first thing to understand. Not failure. Something else. Something quieter. Something you've probably felt but never named. Let's go back to a specific moment. End of the month. You check your account. You made more than last month. You spent more than last month. The number is almost identical to what it was 30 days ago. You stare at it. You don't understand it. You worked harder. You were more careful. You told yourself things were changing. The number doesn't care. Money came in, money left. And what remains is almost exactly what remained before. Not because you're irresponsible, not because you're stupid, because there's a structure underneath your behavior that you haven't touched yet. And until you touch it, everything you add to the top just passes through. That's not a metaphor. That's the mechanism, but we're not there yet. Hold that. Think about progress. Not money specifically. Progress. The version of it you've experienced in your own life. You improve, you get better, you build something, you develop a skill, a relationship, a habit, a practice. You can feel yourself getting somewhere. Then something interrupts it. Life, circumstance, your own mind turning on you. Doesn't matter what it is. And when you come back, you expect to pick up where you left off. You don't. You're further back than you thought, sometimes all the way back, and you rebuild. You get back to where you were. You feel the momentum again. Then something interrupts it again. Same place, same reset, same start. You are not stuck. You are repeating. There's a difference. Stuck implies something external is holding you. Repeating means you're moving. You're genuinely moving. Energy is going in. Effort is real. But the motion is circular, and it keeps returning to the same coordinates. This isn't pessimism. Don't relax into that. Don't let that land softly. Because the reason you're repeating is not random, and that's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Not random. If it were random, the returns would be scattered. Sometimes here, sometimes there. But you keep landing roughly in the same place, same financial position, same relationship patterns, same emotional weight, same point of exhaustion, same ceiling. That kind of consistency requires a structure. Something is holding the shape of your life in place. And every time you grow past a certain point, something pulls it back. Not maliciously, not personally, structurally. Like a rubber band attached to a fixed point. You can stretch, you can move, but the fixed point is still the fixed point. We'll come back to what the fixed point actually is. First, let's stay with the effort, because the effort is real. Nobody watching this is lazy. Lazy people don't feel this particular frustration. Lazy people don't recognize this pattern because they're not moving enough to notice the return. You're moving, you're working, you're trying things, you're reading and learning and adjusting and pushing. And the effort feels like it should be enough. Logically, it should count. Input should produce output. More in should mean more out. That's the basic contract we were taught. But you've lived long enough now to notice that the contract isn't always honored. You put in the work. The result doesn't match. Or the result appears briefly and then disappears. The money is there and then it isn't. The confidence is there and then it collapses. The momentum is there and then something drains it overnight. That's not bad luck. That's structure talking. Here's a fragment, just a fragment. Someone increases their income, not slightly, significantly, 30%, 40%, maybe doubles it. They expected this to change things. They expected the number to hold, to accumulate, to shift their position. A year later, their expenses have risen to match. Their lifestyle expanded to fill the new space. The margin is the same. The stress about money is roughly the same. The feeling of scarcity, the constant background hum of not quite enough, identical. The income changed. The structure didn't. So the structure absorbed the income and returned them to the same position, with a higher number, but the same feeling, the same reality. Because the mechanism that was running before is still running. More money fed it. It didn't disrupt it. This is not progress. More is not progress when the structure underneath more doesn't change. You can pour into something that doesn't hold. You can do it for years, decades. The pouring feels like progress. It isn't. It's effort without structural change, motion without position shift. And here is the part that should interrupt everything you think you understand about your situation. You became very good at surviving the current structure. Read that again. Not escaping it, surviving it. You developed sophisticated strategies for managing the reality the structure created. You learned to cut expenses when money got tight. You learned to push harder when energy got low. You learned to rebuild when things reset. You got better and better at recovering. Recovery is a skill. Absolutely. But if recovery is your primary skill, what does that mean? It means the structure keeps producing the thing you need to recover from, and you've optimized your response to that. You've built yourself into someone who handles the consequences of a system you never questioned. You got stronger in all the places the structure required strength, and the structure continued. Nothing changes until the structure changes. Not the effort, not the mindset, not the attitude, not the information, the structure, the actual architecture underneath all of it. Now let's go deeper into the moment. You're back at that end-of-month account check. Same number, roughly, but this time, don't look at the number. Look at how you felt when you saw it. Because there's something in that feeling that most people skip past. It's familiar, not in a comforting way. Familiar in the way that something you've seen too many times is familiar. The way a problem you've been living with for years is familiar. You recognized that number before you processed it. Some part of you expected it. And that expectation, that's the fixed point. The fixed point is not external. That's the thing. It's not your job, your city, your relationships, your circumstances, though all of those play roles. The fixed point is the invisible ceiling you carry internally, the level at which things feel normal to you, the amount of money that feels like your amount, the degree of progress that feels like the progress available to you. It's not conscious. You didn't choose it. It was constructed over years by your environment, your history, your family's relationship with money and success and visibility, what you watched people like you achieve or not achieve, what you concluded quietly, privately, about what was realistic for someone like you. And it runs like background code. Everything you build gets quietly pulled back toward that internal normal. Not because you self-sabotage in the dramatic sense of the word, but because when things exceed the level that feels natural, something in the system gets uncomfortable, and discomfort prompts behavior, and the behavior returns things to familiar territory, quietly, efficiently, without drama. You do it to yourself and you never see it happening because you're focused on the effort, on the strategy, on the external moves, while the fixed point just sits there, unchanged, doing its work. Here's where we interrupt this. Because you might be nodding, you might be feeling recognition, and recognition can be comfortable. And comfort is exactly what this should not produce, because recognition without disruption is just more sophisticated coping. You can understand all of this completely and still do nothing with it. You can watch this video and feel seen and close the tab and return to the exact behaviors that maintain the exact structure that produces the exact results you've been producing. And that's not because you're weak. That's because understanding a structure is not the same as changing it. This is the part most content doesn't tell you. Most content gives you the insight and assumes the insight is enough. It isn't. The insight is the beginning. The recognition is just the door. Walking through it is an entirely different thing. So what actually changes structure? Let's stay with money because it's concrete. The fixed point in your financial life isn't changed by earning more. We established that. It isn't changed by spending less, necessarily. It isn't changed by reading about wealth or watching videos about wealth or understanding intellectually how wealthy people think. It's changed when you build something that holds, something that doesn't depend on constant input to maintain its position, something that creates a new normal, a new floor, a new set of coordinates that become the familiar, not more income fed into the same structure, a different structure. The person who broke the cycle didn't try harder. They built differently. They stopped pouring into the existing system and started constructing something that held what they poured into it, an asset instead of a drain, a position instead of a cycle. But here's the cut. That's not primarily a financial statement. That's a structural statement about how you build your life in every domain. Relationships have structure. Are you building something that holds, or are you investing continuously into something that returns you to the same place every time? Are your relationships accumulating depth, trust, solidity, or are they resetting? Are you having the same conversation for the third year? Arriving at the same impasse? Health has structure. You've been healthy before. You've been fit before. You've built it and felt it and then watched it dissolve. Were you building something that holds, or were you executing a routine that requires constant re-execution with no structural change underneath? Work has structure. You've had momentum in your career or your business. You felt it building. Then something happened and the momentum stalled and you rebuilt it. Same ceiling. Same point of interruption. Is there a structure underneath your professional life that builds position over time, or are you running hard just to maintain current altitude? The question is not how hard are you working. The question is, what are you actually building? And here's the uncomfortable place this lands. Most people are not building. They are maintaining. They are managing. They are surviving the current structure with considerable skill and effort. But they are not constructing a new structure. They are not laying foundations that will hold weight they're not currently carrying. You never become the person it requires. Not because you can't. Not because you're not capable. Because becoming that person requires dismantling something you currently need. The current structure, the one producing the results you're frustrated with, is also the structure that currently sustains you. It's familiar. It's predictable. You've built your entire behavioral repertoire around navigating it. Changing it means operating in a space where your current skills don't fully apply, where your current instincts will mislead you, where the strategies that kept you functional in the old structure will pull you back if you let them run. And that is genuinely difficult, not hard in the way that running a marathon is hard. Hard in the way that being completely disoriented and continuing to move anyway is hard. Hard in the way that watching everything you've relied on stop being reliable is hard. Most people don't do it, not because they're unwilling, because the old structure produces enough. Enough to survive, enough to have moments of progress, enough to maintain the story that change is coming. And that enough keeps them in it, until the enough isn't enough anymore, until the gap between where they are and where they need to be becomes undeniable, until the cost of staying in the current structure exceeds the discomfort of changing it. That moment is different for everyone. But let's not wait for that moment to arrive violently. Let's look at what it actually takes. Not philosophically, structurally. It takes building before you need to. Most people build when the floor collapses. They construct something new when the old thing fails. But you can feel the ceiling already. You felt it multiple times. You know the coordinates of the return. You know roughly where you keep ending up. That knowledge is intelligence. If you use it, it takes stopping the rebuild cycle. You've been here before, and you rebuilt. This time, don't just rebuild. Before you rebuild the same thing, interrupt it. Ask what structure this rebuilt version will produce. If the honest answer is the same structure, you're about to repeat the cycle with fresh energy. It takes tolerating the gap. This one is the hardest. Because between the old structure and the new one, there is a period where nothing feels solid, where you're not fully in the old thing anymore and not yet established in the new thing. And in that gap, every instinct you have will push you back toward familiar. This is where almost everyone returns, not because they see the old structure and think it's better, but because the gap is uncomfortable enough that familiar, even if frustrating, feels safer than unknown, even if it's what they've been working toward. The gap has to be tolerated, not solved, not shortened by effort or cleverness. Tolerated, stayed in, continued through. That is the requirement. And the person it requires is someone who can be uncomfortable without immediately resolving the discomfort, who can be disoriented without retreating to orientation, who can let the familiar feel wrong for long enough that the new thing gets a chance to become real. You've been trying to become that person from inside the structure that requires your current self. That's the bind. The current structure requires your current instincts. Changing the structure requires instincts you don't fully have yet, and you can only develop those instincts by being in the situation that requires them. But being in that situation means leaving the protection of the current structure. There's no clean way through that. There's only through. But here's what's true. Every time you've grown, genuinely grown, in a way that held, in a way that actually changed your coordinates, it followed this exact shape. You moved past the point the structure protected. You stayed in the discomfort longer than you wanted to. Something in you recalibrated. A new floor formed. You've done it. In smaller ways. In moments you might have attributed to luck or circumstance. But structurally, you've done it. Which means it's not foreign. It's not available only to a different kind of person. It happened in you. The question is whether you can do it deliberately. consciously, with awareness of the mechanism rather than accidentally stumbling through it. And deliberately is harder in some ways, because you can see the discomfort coming, because you know the gap is ahead, because you understand that your instincts will work against you. Knowing all of that and moving anyway is its own particular kind of difficult, but it's the only kind that builds something that holds. One more return. Back to the beginning. You started something. You made decisions. You changed behaviors. You pushed. You tried. And you ended up roughly where you started. Not because the effort was fake. The effort was real. Not because the desire was insufficient. The desire was genuine. Because the structure underneath everything you did remained untouched. And the structure is not your habits. It's not your mindset as a collection of thoughts. It's not your discipline or your consistency. The structure is the invisible architecture that determines what feels normal, what feels like too much, what triggers the pull back to familiar coordinates. Changing that architecture requires a different kind of work, slower, less visible, without the immediate feedback that effort usually provides. The kind of work where you don't know if it's working for a while, where the results are not obvious in the short term, where other people might not see what you're doing or understand why. It requires building things that hold instead of pouring into things that drain. It requires stopping the rebuild cycle long enough to ask what you're rebuilding into. It requires tolerating the gap between the structure you're leaving and the structure you're building. And it requires becoming someone who can do that, not the person you are inside the current structure. A person who doesn't fully exist yet, who is forming in the process of doing this. You never become that person first. You become them in the doing of it. The structure doesn't wait until you're ready. It shifts because you moved into the space that required the shift. You will not feel ready. You will not feel certain. You will not feel like the person it requires. You move anyway, not because of motivation, not because of a moment of clarity that makes it easy, because you've seen the coordinates of the return enough times now to know exactly what staying will cost. And the cost of staying has finally exceeded the fear of the gap. That's the moment. Not inspiration, not revelation. Just the weight of enough returns becoming undeniable. And then, for the first time, you stop rebuilding the same thing with fresh energy. You start building something that holds. Nothing changes until the structure changes. Not the effort, the structure, and you know which one you've been changing.